Pocahontas, Lost and Found. The last rays of the setting sun shone down on Pocahontas as she lay daydreaming in her canoe. Beside her, Meeko the raccoon snored softly. Flit the hummingbird sat on the edge of the canoe, his head tucked under his wing. As the gentle current slowly pulled the trio down the river, Pocahontas thought about all that had happened that day and all she hoped would happen in the next. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice calling her name. "Pocahontas! Pocahontas!" Standing on the riverbank was Nakoma, Pocahontas' best friend. Pocahontas sat up in her canoe. "Nakoma, over here!" she said, waving her arm over her head. "There you are," Nakoma said. "Your father sent me to bring everyone back to the village. A bad storm is coming." Pocahontas looked up at the sky. She could see a few dark clouds on the horizon, but they looked far away. "I'll meet you there," she called as she lay back in her canoe. Nakoma started to argue, but she knew better. And she still had more people to find. With one last look at her friend, she turned around and headed back into the forest. Before long, the gentle motion of the boat had lulled Pocahontas, Meeko, and Flit to sleep. All around them, the wind picked up and the river began to get choppy. Suddenly, a huge wave broke over the side of the canoe, waking the friends. Pocahontas gasped. The storm must have nearly reached the river. Pocahontas picked up her paddle and began to row. Finally, with Meeko's help, she managed to get to shore. "Come on," Pocahontas called to Meeko and Flit. "We have to get home before it starts to rain." Pocahontas looked up at the sky. The sun had set while she slept. Now, it was impossible to tell how close the storm was. But if the strong winds were any sign, the rain wouldn't be far off. Suddenly, a particularly strong gust swept through the woods. Flit's little wings weren't big enough to fight against it, and he blew backward. Luckily, Meeko was there to catch him. "Don't worry, we're almost there," Pocahontas called over her shoulder. In the village, Pocahontas found everyone working hard to prepare for the storm. She hurried over to help. Pocahontas gathered basket after basket of corn. When they were all together, she secured a hide over them to keep the food dry. Pocahontas was just checking the strength of the covering when the first drop of rain fell on her head. She gave the rope one more tug and then ran into her father's tent. As she stepped inside, the clouds burst open and it began to pour. "Daughter, there you are," Chief Powhatan said, wrapping Pocahontas in a hug. "I feared Nakoma would not find you in time. I should have trusted that she knows your ways well." "I'm sorry, Father," Pocahontas said. "Nakoma tried to make me come back, but I didn't listen." Pocahontas paused. She didn't remember seeing her friend in the village. "Father, do you know where Nakoma is?" she asked. The chief looked at his daughter, concerned. "I thought she was with you," he said. Pocahontas heard the storm raging outside. If Nakoma was still out there, she could be hurt or in trouble. "I have to go look for her," Pocahontas told her father. Before Chief Powhatan could stop her, Pocahontas ran back outside, right into the middle of the storm. "Nakoma! Nakoma!" Pocahontas shouted as she sprinted back toward the river. Her friend had to be there somewhere, but the rain was too heavy. Pocahontas could barely see in front of her face. She had to hold on tight to the trees to keep from being blown away. Pocahontas called out again. The storm was so loud that she didn't know if her friend could even hear her. Pocahontas knew that she should return to the safety of her village, but she had to find her best friend. Determined, she pressed on. Pocahontas had almost reached the river's edge when, suddenly, she heard something. Cupping a hand to her ear, she tried to concentrate on the sound. It was faint, but it sounded like someone calling her name. "Nakoma, is that you?" Pocahontas called. "Pocahontas, where are you?" her friend called back. "Keep yelling, Nakoma, I'll find you," Pocahontas shouted. Pocahontas followed the sound of her friend's voice. At last, she found her huddled against a rock. "Pocahontas, I can't believe you found me in this terrible storm. I was so focused on finding everyone else and telling them to get to safety that I lost track of time. By the time I turned back, the storm had started and I got lost in the rain and wind." "It's okay, Nakoma," Pocahontas said, taking Nakoma's hand. "We'll get home together. I think the storm came in from the west. If we just push against the wind, we should be heading east. That's the way back to the village." Together, the friends headed back into the storm. Although it was still very dark and windy, the storm didn't seem as bad now that Pocahontas had found Nakoma. Finally, Pocahontas and Nakoma reached Chief Powhatan's tent. Pocahontas' father was relieved to see them and handed the girls warm blankets. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside, Pocahontas and Nakoma were dry and happy. The two huddled by the fire, listening to Chief Powhatan tell stories about the tribe's past and future, until at last they drifted to sleep, tired from the night's adventure.